So it was in that point in your military fitness class that you realized that this is what endurance means to you, and is that where your endurance training began for you as well?
So there is this event called Spartan. It's an obstacle course event. So in the class, people were discussing that they're going for this event, and it requires you to do like rope climbing. It requires you to lift weights and like climb up the mountains and stuff.
And in what way do you want to evolve, internally as a business owner, as an athlete, on the very personal front? Do you have any goals in that direction as well?
Yes, I think the whole idea of reaching success very fast is something that I want to change. Like, sometimes I sit and I'm like, okay, I'm not doing enough. I want to reach my goal very fast. So it's about being patient.
So what role is mentorship playing in all three categories in a triathlon?
So I think in anything in life, if you've got somebody who can guide you, that makes a big difference. So for me, I have somebody who himself has done the Ironman, so he helped me a lot.
When we're thinking of gaining motivation from other spaces, I know for sure that you're very, very highly self-motivated.
So there's a book called Born to Run. That's something that really changed the way I think about running. And it talks about humans running like 200, 220. I did not even know that this existed.
So today we have somebody very, very special on the show, and her journey is a testament to the power of discipline, strength, and integrity. I cannot wait to welcome Shivangi Sarda, who has completed her half Ironman and even a full Ironman. And let's dig right into her journey. Hi, how are you?
Hi,
Welcome so much to my show today. I'm so excited to know everything about the fitness world from the point of view of a woman.
Yeah,
and that's the best thing.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm super excited, and hopefully we can inspire more women to take up this.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So I want to go right into your childhood. Let's begin with where you're from, your schooling, where did you go to college, and then we go into how you started with the whole journey of training.
Yes, so born and brought up in Jaipur. I was in MGD for my schooling, and that's where actually my sports journey started.
Okay.
So just as part of one of the sports, summer camp, my parents put me into basketball, skating, every sport possible because I was a chubby kid. And, the whole
I
idea...
can't imagine that.
So the whole idea was to, just stay fit, do something in the summer vacation, learn a new sport. And that's how I started. And I also used to play cricket with my cousins in our colony. So like how colony cricket was back that time. So I used to play cricket and just, all the time outside. Then after school, I went to LSR for my undergraduation in psychology and pol science. And then I went for my master's to Jamia for my master's in psychology.
Wow.
After working for a while, I went to Australia for my MBA marketing, sports marketing. And that's where actually everything changed for me in terms of what I was looking for my career.
I think firstly, it's so exciting for me to know that we were in the same school together.
Yes.
I was also in MGD and we were just a few years apart, I think. Going from Jaipur to Delhi to Australia, do you think there was a moment in your childhood that you said you played basketball, you played cricket, but at that age, did you know that you would take this up full time and build a career around this at that time in your life?
No, so back in school, as I said, I was playing basketball. I played for MGD, I played for Rajasthan, so I played at national level. And that's how I got into LSR through sports quota. And the whole idea was to be an athlete and, play for the country. So I wanted to play for India.
Right.
But basketball, of course, it's a team sport. And, I just tried my best, but, it didn't work out. And then, as you grow, you want to make a career in corporate. And that was the whole idea. So I started working as a business development manager. That was my first job. And Gurgaon. Yes.
Okay.
And then I did my master's after that. So the whole idea, that was the whole idea to like work in corporate and, just have a normal 9 to 5 kind of a life and, just continue. Then I went to Australia for my MBA and that's where I was doing a bit of fitness. So I played till college in LSR. I played for Delhi. I was a Delhi captain as well.
Okay. So you finished your schooling in MGD and then you went to LSR. Tell me about your journey around fitness in LSR and then how it went on to Australia for you.
So I was a national level basketball player. That's how I got into LSR through sports quota. There I was playing regularly. So like basketball is the biggest part of my life. So, I used to wake up, go for practice at 5 o'clock when others in the college are doing other things. So, I tried to maintain that discipline there. I used to go to the gym in the evening and, train myself just to be a better player. got a lot of opportunities, played for Delhi University, played for Delhi team there, and the whole idea was to hopefully represent India. But after that, after my LSR, I went to Jamia for my masters, and that's where I continued playing. But of course, because as you're advancing in your career, that started to come down a little bit.
Right.
And then eventually, fitness just became a part of daily routine where I would just go to the gym, do like 2, 3 classes, and run once in a while just for general fitness as to how the body is looking, because that was the whole idea when I'm growing up. So even if I was playing basketball at a good level, but the whole idea was how the body is looking. And
It was more aesthetically inspiring for you at that time and not really endurance based.
yeah,
Up until this time.
yes, and I didn't know what endurance was for me because I was into team sports like cricket, basketball. I used to do a bit of running back in school because in school, whatever sport was there, so I would play handball, throw ball, whatever was there, because I always loved sports so much. So I tried everything, but I followed basketball and cricket to professional level. So I played at state level also in cricket. Then I went to Australia. There it was, managing your food, managing work,
Basically everything.
everything. So in this general fitness, like going to the gym once or twice, just doing a bit of running, and that was the whole, idea of fitness for me. But when I went there, that's when I actually saw that fitness, what was here for me, was about how my body looked,
Right.
versus it is completely different. So I met a lot of women that were so strong. Like, I would never imagine doing a push-up because all I was doing in the gym in Jaipur or in India was cardio, because, that would make you lose fat, was the whole idea.
And look leaner.
Leaner, yeah. So even if I was in the national basketball team, even I was working out like morning, I was playing basketball, but the whole idea was how your body looked. It was never about performance. So we never ate for performance. We were like low carb and, just trying to look a certain way, even if you're playing so much. So that's where I met a lot of women who were like doing pull-ups and push-ups, and I was like blown away. I was like, this is something that is so exciting, and I've never thought of that it's possible. So yeah, so that's where I started changing my training, changing my nutrition, learning more about it. And I got so interested that I thought I'll do a certification for fitness from Australia for my own knowledge.
Okay.
So I did my first Cert 3 in fitness from there while I was working in my corporate job. When the fitness level went down a little bit, so I remember entering a class that was called a military fit class.
In college.
In college. And there are like 10, 12 of us in the class. And I thought, it's a military fit class. What challenging thing can be? I see the board and there are things written like 100 push-ups, 100 pull-ups, 100 burpees. And I'm like, okay, 100 repetitions of each. And then I see for the first time women doing pull-ups, push-ups. And that changed the game completely for me, because before that, for me, it was all about doing cardio and, just doing like very light weights, because women should not lift weights was the whole idea back then.
Not more than 1 or 2 kgs. And
Yeah, because you look bulky and, so, and then I was like, wow, this is what I want. Like, people are so strong and they really don't care how you look, and everyone's performing at the same level. So that really changed the way I was thinking about fitness.
So it was in that point in your military fitness class that you realized that this is what endurance means to you. And is that where your endurance training began for you as well?
So there is this event called Spartan. It's an obstacle course event. So in the class, people were discussing that they're going for this event, and it requires you to do like rope climbing. It requires you to lift weights and like climb up the mountains and stuff. So I said, okay, I'll just try doing this. So we went as a team, and that's where I was like, I'm not fit. Like, I really need to work on fitness. I really need to get stronger, lift heavier weights, start running more. So I used to run like 2-3 kilometers just for general fitness. So I never knew what endurance world is before that, because I did not know what marathons are. I had never heard of a thing called triathlon. Forget Ironman. I didn't know triathlon was a sport that existed.
Right.
Because back in India, the awareness was very less.
I think it still is to a certain extent.
Yes.
So was it during your Spartan training when you learned about marathons and triathlon? Was it at the same time?
So for marathons, yes, because in Australia it's a very sporting culture. So I could see people signing up for like 5Ks, 10Ks. So my journey actually started from a 5K running event. It was the Melbourne Marathon, and some friends were doing it for fun, and I said, okay, I'll do a 5K and see how it goes. So I started with a 5K run, and then I finished, and I'm like, okay, I'm never running more than this. And then there is a 10K event next year, and I signed up for that. Same thing.
How long ago was this?
So this was 2018, 2019. Actually, I did my first 5 kilometers event. And then it was just like, okay, you do an event and you go back home and you get back. There was nothing that I want to do more than this. But then I think that's what happens with running. Once you start, you want to see how far you can
And
go.
you don't want to stop. So did you make 5K your benchmark for your practice sessions also? or did that inspire you to plan your next race accordingly?
So once I did the 5K, I thought, can I do the 10K? So, then you move on to, and I did not know anything about structured training back then. Like, it was like, okay, today you go to the gym, you do maybe arms, one day you do legs. Okay, tomorrow I feel like running, there was no structure. I was just doing random training and I could just go for a run like that. This is now when I started training for events that there is a big difference between structured training and just doing random things. And that really gave me the discipline and the consistency I was looking for.
What were your personal initial setbacks or obstacles that you probably faced when you decided that I want to take this up more seriously and I want to actually prepare for competitions? Were there any challenges, practical, any outward situations that probably you had to overcome to get to that level?
Yeah, so for me, I think lack of knowledge was something, because back in school also, even though I was like, trying to be healthy, but there was lack of knowledge about nutrition that, you should need. So there was a time when I was on such a restricted diet where I would go out with my friends and I'll only eat salad because I thought that's healthy. But the salad only had greens and no macros like, protein, like other things. So there was a time I didn't eat rice for a year because I thought that'll make you fat. So I think my biggest challenge was there was lack of knowledge, lack of sources where I could learn
Is
from.
this a myth that you should skip eating rice?
Definitely.
So it's not, because so many old age dietitians would tell you that rice is actually only carbs. You should completely give up on it, especially for women who are training. But that's not true, sir.
So it's not true. You should eat rice. Of course, it all comes down to how much you're eating. It's about portion control. There was a myth that white rice is better than brown rice versa. There's nothing as such. Both are good. And I now truly believe that, we are in India. We should actually eat regional. So rice, of course, anything you binge on, even if you're having excess of protein, is going to...
That's also too much then.
Yes. So it's about portion control. There is nothing like you should not eat rice, because as human beings, we need all the three sources: carbs, food, protein, fat, and everything to actually function and be at the best.
Right.
Yeah.
How important or not important is it to be vegetarian, non-vegetarian, meat eating in the realm of diet planning for training?
So it's very subjective. I personally am a vegetarian. I used to eat eggs earlier, but I left it for my personal reasons. Like I just felt like changing the diet.
But eggs, they say, is such a mandatory source of protein.
Yeah.
And people who do eat eggs, they swear by it.
Yeah, so I think what works, it's there's nothing that I'm doing for any religion or anything specific. It's what worked for me. And so before I went out, the whole idea was eggs will give you protein, meat will give you protein, vegetarian diet doesn't have protein. And that's why I started eating it, because I wanted to improve my fitness. And when I went to Australia, I met people, they were vegan and they were doing endurance sports. They were doing things like Spartan. They were running like 50 kilometers, 100 kilometers, and they were on vegan diet.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, so if I want to improve, I can actually do this on vegetarian diet.
Are you vegan?
No, I'm a vegetarian. Although my dairy consumption is less. Okay. Coffee is something I cannot live by. So, I do like milk in my coffee. But yeah, so that was the whole idea. And I was just eating eggs because I enjoyed the whole idea of being fit.
Right.
Not because I enjoyed the taste. So
as a vegetarian, how do you compensate for it?
It's simple that you look for protein sources in each meal you have. So say, for example, if I'm having a poha for my breakfast, I'll add sprouts to it. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of lentils. I'll have chole, chana, like the basic Indian food that you look at. Right. Tofu is something good that you can add. Paneer is something. So for me, because especially my diet changes a lot based on the training. Mm-hmm. So if I'm training, say, for a half marathon, will be different versus when I was training for a full Ironman. Right. My food consumption was like a lot.
So coming back to a bit of the training, starting with the Ironman journey, before I go deep into your training and your routine and your mindset for Ironman, at what point in your life did your training for marathon running start?
So as I said, 5 kilometers was the first. Right. Then I did the 10K. Then I did the 21. That's called the half marathon.
Okay.
The full marathon is a 42.2 kilometers run. So same, like after I did the 10, I was like, can I do a 21? So I just signed up for it and I did the 21 kilometers.
All in Australia?
Yeah, so this was in Australia and it's such a, nice. So I did my full marathon, Melbourne Marathon in October in Australia.
Okay.
That's where actually my journey of half marathon started.
Wow.
So I went back, so real life is a full circle. I went back to do that full marathon, that's 42.2, which was in October.
Back in Australia.
Yeah. So before I did my full marathon, that's 42.2, I actually did my half Ironman. So it's been like, I've not really followed like a road. Yeah.
Right.
So whenever, so I got to know about the half Ironman. There's a mentor of mine. So he did the full Ironman and he said, have you heard of a thing where you have to like, swim 1.9 kilometers, bike 90 kilometers after that and run 21.1. I said, I've never heard of this. So he said, I think you should do it. And I signed up for it. I did not even have a bike. I did not know how to swim properly. I have a lot of open water fear of, being in open water. And I just signed up for it for like 6 months. I trained and I attempted.
Give me a bit of an insight into how you started training for all categories.
Okay, so swimming is my weakest point. Something that I did in school. I did participate in one of the inter-house, but because there was no athletes, so they put me in.
Okay.
So it's really bad. So I used to swim just for recreation. Swimming in the pool versus swimming in an ocean, it's completely different. And being from Jaipur, of course, we don't have access to, lake.
Water body.
Yes.
Right.
So as we are growing up, and I think that's a big difference between generally Indian athletes versus people who are in like, a country like Australia, because open water is so accessible to
and it's so
them.
common for them.
Yes. So for me, that was the biggest fear, to be in open water. That was one thing. So I started swimming in SMS Stadium, just doing laps. And then I still remember there was a coach and he said that, aap likhwa lo, aapse nahi ho payega. You're such a bad swimmer.
Oh,
Yeah, because I have
bad to you.
Yeah. So, and I know I'm not a good swimmer. So that was a challenge. For my cycling, I didn't have a bike. So you need a road bike for this event. So I used to go to the gym and do stationary cycling till the time my bike was coming. And then you've got an indoor trainer which you use for your cycles. I used to do indoor rides and go outdoor as well. Yeah.
So just to like understand this a little better, do you think the different terrains, different kind of planes that you are in, whether it's India, Australia, do you think your environment also plays a very big role in the quality of training that you do?
Definitely it does. And I think in terms of resources as well, like here, if you're going out for a ride, you have to think twice.
Yeah.
The traffic situation, you cannot venture out on the highways by yourself. So there are those small things. The weather conditions, like during peak summer, there's no way you can go for a run in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Right? Swimming pool, as I said, that we don't have an open water body to really train comfortably. Like you'll have to go to Goa or South.
So you have to sit somewhere,
Yes.
actually.
So those things do matter, but it's so good to see that people are really breaking those barriers and getting into the sport.
I think the whole concept of Ironman, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think even a lot of men in India would know that much about it.
Yes.
I think it's more popular outside. I think even in India, I see sports is huge, of course. Your cricket, basketball, not basketball, cricket or badminton or any other sports. But there is no culture of Ironman that much in India, I feel.
Yeah, even running has now picked up. Like, a smallest thing, like people don't know the distances also. So like just to, break it, you've got a 5K, which people can start off. Then you've got a 10, then you've got a half marathon. People are running more than 50 kilometers as well. So I did a 50K run. There is a 100-kilometer run. So there's so much out there. People are now
don't know about.
Yeah, now there's awareness about it. Ironman, yes, it's not a very popular sport right now, but we have started with the 70.3, the half Ironman in Goa now.
Or Ironman. Why is it called? They are not men. So why aren't they being called as Iron Women or Iron Lady?
Yeah, I think that's something that's been there. Everyone is talking about it where, they should actually change, because when we get the medal also, even the merchandise is Iron Man. Right. So like when you're crossing the finish line as well, they shout your name like Shivangi Sada, you're an Iron Man. But they should do an Iron Woman. I think soon they should realize this and probably just change it. Definitely, I think something that needs to be put it out there, that people need to change.
I mean, I hope that changes.
Definitely.
Because that'll just, again, it's starting with a discrimination at some level. I'm going to come back to this topic in depth later. I want to first understand that, okay, we train in pools, which is so different from training in the ocean. Is that a major difference in training for half Ironman versus full?
So I'll just break down the distance. So half Ironman, the sport remains the same. So you swim in a half Ironman, that's 1.9 kilometers swimming. In a full, it's double, 3.8 kilometers. Cycling is 90 kilometers for a half, that's 70.3, and then it's 180 for a full.
Almost double.
Double. Everything is double. So you run a half marathon, 21.1 kilometers for a half Ironman, and 42.
Yeah.
And each sport has an intermediate cutoff. So when you are doing your swimming for a full, that's 3.8 kilometers, you have to swim it in 2 hours, 20 minutes. If you don't do it, you're disqualified. So it's a very, and I do like this thing about the sport is that there is no change in the cutoff time for a female or a male. So those standards are the same, their distance is the same. Now, swimming in a pool is very different because you can see that there is an end. It's a 25-meter pool or a 50-meter pool. You see there are lines you can, look at and you can swim and,
You can navigate yourself in certain.
yeah, there are lanes. It's very comfortable, right? Versus when you're in an open water, you don't know what's happening. And then there is a lot of things like there's current, there's the wind. So when I did my full Ironman in Hamburg, it was so windy that I was like, I cannot swim in this lake because it was cold. Of course, it was like very cold there. And the wind speed was crazy, where even if you're trying to swim, you're being drifted to the right side or the left side. So the biggest challenge becomes for you to actually see because you've got like your distance marked. Now, say I'm swimming like this, but the water is taking me to the left side, I'll end up swimming more distance because I'm trying to. So you have to in between sight where you're going. So those
I
challenges.
can't even imagine. How did you navigate that?
So yeah, like for me, because it's the weakest sport, I had just one thing. I just have to keep swimming. There is no way I'm stopping. So I took 1 hour 42 minutes to do my 3.8 kilometer swim. There was no way I stopped. I just kept going. I could see like I would like sight and do like breaststroke and then like again go to freestyle. That's the only way. Yeah.
What was the time cutoff for this?
So for the full Ironman, the entire so it changes with the
No, for only swimming.
2 hours 20 minutes.
2 hours. And you finished that in 1 hour 42.
42, which even I'm shocked because I was like,
That's commendable. Because,
thank you.
you were going off the line,
Yes.
and then you had challenges like the current and the wind.
And the
And you
fear
still
of
beat that way below your time,
Yes.
despite it being your weakest sport. So I
Yeah.
think that's another level of grit and maybe mental strength that will probably took you through your entire journey in that
Yeah, and
situation.
here is something I want to share the experience where the mind can play so much with your, whole experience. So I was so scared that I will not make the cutoff. I came out of the water and it was 1:42, but I read 2 hours 42 minutes because in my head I thought I'm never making the cutoff. So I come out and I'm like, it's over for me because it's 2 hours 20 minutes. And then there was a volunteer, he said, keep going. You're still in the race. And then I saw again it was 1:42. So this is how the mind plays with you sometimes.
It tricks you into
It
doing
tricks
something
you,
else
yes.
altogether.
So yeah, so it was an experience definitely.
How does your typical week of training look like?
So it changes because I navigate between marathons and doing triathlons. When it's marathons, it's more running oriented. So generally, whatever sport I'm doing, I will train about 8 to 9 sessions in a week. So in 7 days, I take 1 day of rest recovery. That's generally a Monday because you just want mental and physical rest.
Right.
So typically, like if I'm running, it'll be like 5 days, 6 days of running. I do because I love strength training, so it's like 2 to 3 days of strength training, and then sometimes when I get time, I do yoga because it just helps you release the
Release
muscles.
and stay flexible.
Yeah.
And when you're training for triathlons, like how are you balancing between all three sports then in a week?
So it depends as to where you are in your training. There are some times when the peak happens, so that when everything becomes equal. So there are different ways. One approach is that you first work on my weak point. So like my swimming was the weakest point, so I started working on that more. I knew my running is strong, so it's very subjective based on the athlete. So running was slightly less in the beginning.
Okay.
And I knew that swimming needs more time, so I would do more of swim. So like 3 sessions of swimming.
Okay.
Minimum 2 to 3 sessions of rides. One will be an endurance ride, one will be a speed session. 3 sessions of running, then you got strength. So like you are
Wow.
training
That's
about
a lot of work.
about 14 to 16 hours a week.
So what role is mentorship playing in all three categories in a triathlon?
So I think in anything in life, if you've got somebody who can guide you, that makes a big difference. So for me, I have somebody who himself has done the Ironman, so he helped me a lot to understand the sport because I feel that you can study. So I can be a marathon or a Ironman coach, but when you do it yourself, you know the small things, like smallest thing like what to eat on the bike, what to have before the swim. I cannot have something heavy before the swim, but I need that nutrition. So to plan everything. So yeah, I mean, he helped me a lot, but I myself also did a lot of study in this sport, and you learn from different athletes what they're doing. So I think it's a whole process of learning, trying it on yourself, and then just improving as you go.
And so he's guiding you for all.
Yeah. So he helped me plan my entire program.
Okay.
So In terms of guiding, like swimming, I would go to SMS Stadium, and there were some coaches who were kind enough to just tell me that your right hand is not working. You better start working that. Because as I'm not a very good swimmer, so those things help. And in the end, it's all about process. Like you have to have that belief that if you're putting in the work, there is going to be a crowd out. Yes.
What is the role of strength training
Yes.
while you're training for marathons and Ironman?
It's extremely important. Strength training. So people confuse strength training with a lot of other things. Like, they feel that it's all about jumping around, doing functional. It is about lifting weights. You need to do that because firstly, it reduces the risk of injury. Second, it actually improves your performance because your muscles are stronger. You can generate more power. Thirdly, cross training is very important because if you're running, for example, you're just running direct straight, right? So there's only one set of muscles that are working a lot.
Okay.
So what about the other muscles? So for example, a lot of people get knee injuries, hip injuries because the other muscles are not strong enough because they're not getting used. So I think strength training is a beautiful way of mixing everything together. If you want to be in the sport for long, you need to do strength training.
So this, other than training for your swimming and running and cycling separately, you should hit the gym and do strength.
Yes. So if minimum 2 times is good. See, a lot of people, because most of us are recreational athletes, like, we've got work, we've got other commitments. So if you cannot do twice, at least once a week. And you should also focus on doing, if you're an athlete, a full body session instead of doing like a back, chest, legs, because you've got less time and you want to hit the muscles more than you would, right? So if your aim is to build muscles and grow bigger, that's when you do hypertrophy training, where you do like back day, chest day. But if you're in a sport, you don't really need that. You rather go twice,
focus on your full
body sessions and do a lot of unilateral work. So like one leg, so like, your split squats, lunges, because that's very important because a sport like running requires you to be on one leg. So you need to have that balance. So I think if you do a smart programming, it really helps.
What all in life are you juggling at the moment besides training?
Yeah, so I run my own startup. It's called Fitness.trail, where I train athletes, general population. It's an online and offline platform. So work is something that, takes up a lot, and especially working in fitness where it requires you to put in a lot of physical energy as well.
Right.
And then balancing that with my own passion, that's, being an athlete, is something that's,
And how long ago did you open your studio?
So in 2019, I was working in Australia before that. So when I was doing my certifications, I just got so much into it that I kept studying, and I just felt like that I need to come back and I need to educate people that lifting weights or, the right way of exercising is so important. Because even I went through the whole process of being on restricted diets, just hitting the gym and just running on the treadmill for 30 minutes because cardio helps you lose fat and, those things. So I wanted to come back and especially educate women that you can lift weights. It helps you. It's so important. You don't really need to starve yourself to look a certain way. So, that was the whole idea. So 2019 is when I came back. I started from my own studio in Jaipur.
In Jaipur,
yeah.
In that year only, immediately you opened it.
So, no, actually I started with a mobile fitness facility. So that was something, the concept I saw in Australia and Dubai when I was traveling.
Okay.
Where I saw trainers would take stuff like, kettlebells, dumbbells in the car and go to different locations and train people.
Oh, lovely.
So that was something I was very different. I thought it's something exciting to be outdoors and, train. So that's how I started with. So I would go to different locations and train people. And then because I was also actually working for my company that time. So I was juggling between 2 jobs.
Jobs as well?
Yes. So
in corporate?
Yes. So I was working as a business development manager for a company in Australia.
Okay.
I came back and I changed my role for a communication lead. So I was handling the business between Bangalore and the Melbourne office.
Okay.
So I was working that part-time and I was also working on my startup. So my company was very, very kind enough to tell me that, Shwangi, just go do it.
Your thing.
Yeah. And if it doesn't work out, you were more than welcome to come back. So I think that was very nice to have such people, who give you that motivation. So when I came in, so I started with this and then I just knew. So I think January I came back. April, I got to know about 70.3.
Okay.
And Ironman. And I was like, I think this is what I want to do. So September, because it got too much with training and everything, I resigned from my job.
So basically you had to choose between certain parts of your life at that time.
Yes.
And starting a personal studio is a very big entrepreneurial feat as well. What really got into your mind at that time? How is the mobile fitness training working out? You did try that in Jaipur as well?
Yes, so this was in Jaipur. I started. It worked out well, but in the end, it takes a lot of energy for you to like travel to different locations, and that time I was also learning a lot about myself and actually just figuring out if this is something I want to do in my life. Do I want to be, in fitness as a professional, or I just want to do it for my own thing? So I think that was a good time for me to gauge and understand that whole idea of how this industry works. And then I was sure. Then I started investing in my studio, and then COVID happened. So
That must have changed the game.
yeah. So I thought this is it, and then I got a message from one of my clients. She's like, "I'm getting bored. Can you do an online class for me?" And I said, "I've never done an online Zoom class, or She's like, "Let's just do it and see how it goes." So I did that first class, and I was shocked that it can work out because she had some equipment at home, and then I posted because I was maintaining my social media. So I posted one video, and then somebody else reached out like, hey, can you take it for me as well? And that's how my business completely changed. So I just went with the opportunity. So now I train 70% of my clients online. They are based out of India, abroad, and yeah, fewer, of course, in Jaipur.
In Jaipur as well.
Yes.
When you're doing a very intense workout, recovery has a very big role to play to allow you to keep moving forward. What is your take on that in terms of what is the process that you follow and what is the role that nutrition is playing in this?
Yes, so it's huge. Nutrition and sleep play a very, very big role. For me, it's not just about post, it's about pre and during as well. So what I have before my sessions is very important. I don't personally believe in fasted cardios, even though there's a lot a bit. So fasted cardios is people waking up and going for their workouts without eating anything because they feel they'll burn more calories, but that's not the case.
Okay.
So I don't believe in fasted cardios. I don't even ask my clients to do it because when you're sleeping, you're actually fasting for so long. So it's better to have something and do the workout so that you also have the energy. So I'll have a banana. That's my go-to before a run because that just takes 10-15 minutes to digest. So because I start my runs early sometimes. So I'll have that. I'll have a date or something. During, it depends. So like if a session is more than 60 minutes, you need to refuel.
Okay.
You need to eat, otherwise you will, hit a wall. So if it's 60 minutes, then I'll have a date with a rock salt, or I'll have like a quick bite of a protein bar or something. And post-workout, I'll have my protein shake, which I take. And then I also believe a lot in eating real food. So then I'll eat with like maybe like a poha if it's in morning, or like some whatever homemade breakfast with that.
Something light on the stomach and something which is like in your daily diet.
Yes.
There is a lot of noise around whey protein. Yes. Can you quickly give me your opinion on that?
So whey protein, vegan protein, both are safe if it's from a good, source. There's no problem. There's a lot about that. Anything in excess is bad, right? So like people will just have protein, like they'll have 4 scoops of protein in a day. And then
not okay.
Yeah, and they're not even training that much. So I know people who are going to the gym and just like doing 3 sets of bicep curls and like 1 chest press, and they're like loading themselves with like 3 scoops of protein. You don't need that.
Yeah, I don't need that.
Yeah.
There has to be a balance of your workout with your food and vice versa.
Yeah. And that's when they start seeing problems. And then there are cases where people will overload with protein and then they end up gaining fat, which is obvious because you're in calorie access, right? So those things need to be taken care of.
So in your opinion, it's all right?
It's all right if it's from a safe source, but in the end, if you can stick to natural sources, that's the best. So I try to stick to as much natural sources of protein, like if you're a vegetarian, your sprouts, chana, those things. If you eat eggs, you eat meat.
Up to 2 scoops is good enough to take?
It depends. So it's very subjective. So like, for example, I'll take from my, training. If I'm training hard enough, that's when I will add 2 scoops. But if I'm not training and if I'm going for an easy run, I don't really need to add supplements, right? So I will not have protein then.
Okay. And it's also okay to take whey protein in that case if it's under the limit and it's decent amounts?
Yes. It's safe if it's from a good source. And also there's a very nice, natural Indian, that's Sattu Atta.
Okay.
That's something that a lot of people in the audience have started having. It does have a little bit of extra carbs.
Okay.
But it's a very good source of protein as well. So nowadays when I'm supplementing, I'll have 1 scoop of Sattu Atta. That's like the most basic Indian thing that you can find.
Is it a good substitute for your regular plant or whey protein?
Has
it got that much grams in that which you required normally to have?
So it will have a little bit extra carbs because it's made of sattu, so it cannot really replace it, but it's a good addition to your other sources of protein that you're having.
While training for all sorts of high endurance competitions, genetics play a role in this?
Yes, genetics play a big role, and we can see that, when you're looking at performance, there are going to be some people from some regions who will outperform. And it also plays a major role. There are two kinds of muscle fibers in your body, fast twitch and slow twitch. So you really need to train those muscle fibers. So you'll see so I'll just, break it up. So fast twitch is where, the more power is produced, just to say in a layman's language. So it's like a very small burst of energy. And slow twitch is where you'll see more endurance runners. And that's why you'll see a sprinter versus an endurance runner look very different. A sprinter will have more muscular kind of a like body profile, versus endurance generally you'll see more on the leaner side. So that also plays a major role as to, how you're performing.
And when talking about Ironman, it is not a defined competitive scenario as Olympics or Commonwealth. Are there any pre-medical, tests or anything of that kind taken into consideration while athletes are applying for that?
So when you sign up, you do sign a waiver that if anything happens to you, you're on your own, because it's a high risk sport. They do have medical teams around, So yeah, you're yourself responsible for doing it. Although at a higher level where so how we have, say, state level, national level. So Ironman championships are also there. For that, they do have some procedures that they follow.
Okay. But when someone is training for even marathons and that, people are usually drinking, smoking, taking cocaine, marijuana, all of that. Now,
Yes.
what is your take on those people who are consuming all of this and then trying out these very massively important competitive sporting events?
So I think it totally depends on what you want from your training. You can do everything. There are people who are like having beers a day before and, performing next day. So it's very subjective. It also, if you see from science point of view, definitely it's a big no. You should not be doing this because it's completely against what you're trying to do. It hampers your recovery. If you're having alcohol, your sleep goes for a toss, which is the main thing. Recreationally, if you're having it, it's on you. Of course, but in terms of performance, it will definitely hamper. But there's a very interesting podcast I came across, and they talk about how there is a research and, how they're seeing where people who are into some kind of addiction, they actually end up becoming very strong endurance athletes. So ultra runners, people who are running like 100, 200 kilometers. So they've seen that, there are a lot of junkies who actually change their lifestyle. So they're not doing it. They're kind of going away from that, because the kind of high they get from doing those drugs is also felt when they're doing such events.
So you mean because their bodies are so used to the high from these substances, that high is carrying on when they are preparing for the sport as well?
So I think what I personally feel is that even running is kind of an addiction, right? Like if you ask me, if I know that this week I have to run 70 kilometers, and if I don't do it, I do feel bad about it, right? So it's a repetitive behavior. So anything that's repetitive, so it's a healthy addiction, but people do get addicted to running as well.
But talking about junkies, for example, do you feel they are snorting something a week before and trying out something a week, completely away from all of this, putting in their 100% hard effort into training for events like this, and taking their time to get there, having this mental grit to achieve it when they're doing it at that time, versus a competitor or a person who's competing alongside, who's probably on some substance?
So I think, it's people who are true to the sport will not really do it. I feel like, we are doing such sports like marathons and, ultra events just for your own self.
Correct.
So, I'm always competing with my time. Like, if I've done, say, in whatever time, I want to improve that. So, I think it's a very pure sport that way. But of course, it's subjective. Some people, they might want to achieve a certain time by taking some kind of banned substance, but that's on them. So it's unfair, but there are many other things that, are unfair. But in the end, you have to stay focused on what's positive and what the sport is doing at the larger picture.
Because there is also no governing body who's doing these checkpoints for you. It's kind of a recreational event that probably became a full-time sporting event with time.
So most of the people who are taking part in marathons are lifestyle athletes, and they're doing it for their own fitness, health, to have fun. I think it's a great way to travel. Like, you go to different locations and you're doing it. So there are no governing bodies where, say if I do a run, they can't check 10,000 people. But when you're at a level, elite level, definitely there are checks and people do that. And but at a recreational
mass
level,
level,
yeah, it's
right,
not.
there is it. Um, while training for the full Ironman, what was the most mentally challenging part for you?
For me, it was the swimming, because I could not sleep. I was like, there is no way I'm doing that distance. Like 3.8 is a lot. So swimming was one. Second was riding, because riding outdoors is always, it just gives a lot of anxiety around the whole idea of going to the highway by yourself and, doing like 150 kilometers. So I was very lucky to have people who were supporting me. So I always used to have a rider with me because it's not safe to just venture out. There can be puncture, there can be many things that can happen. But for me, I think the whole change of training for an endurance event, like, training like 12 hours, 14 hours weekly, and managing work, because I was working full time as well. So, managing both things, nutrition, there were times when I didn't want to eat food because your calorie intake goes so high and you're practically eating the same thing every day. Like, there are going to be some happy days where you can go out and eat a pizza or something, but generally because you want to eat clean, so you're like, sticking to the same food. So that would get challenging sometimes.
Sometimes monotonous. What is one mental hack that let you go through all of this?
So this is something that's actually helping me with my work as well, where I do think about the end goal. Like, I know that this is the date when my event is, and, I visualize crossing that finish line. But then I've started focusing on today, like the process. And that's something that I started enjoying. Like, I know that I have to run 42 kilometers in February, but I'm just focused on what I have to do today. And that's something that, gives me a lot of peace when I finish my, say, today is my 10K run. If I do it, I'm happy and I'll just look forward to the next training event rather than just being obsessed with what the result is going to be.
So you're breaking it down on a daily basis.
Yes.
And I think what you're saying is consistency is, again, very, very key here.
Yes.
To achieve whatever it is that you want to do. When you crossed the finish line at the Ironman, what was that feeling? What was that emotion?
So I don't remember crossing the finish line. That's the, funny thing, because so I took 13 hours, 47 minutes to do the full Ironman. And by the end, your body is like, you don't know what's happening. So, and my sister was there. My sister was there to support me. So she was at the finish line. I don't remember seeing her. I just remember just, crossing and just being grateful. Like that was the whole idea. But yeah, the whole experience, I think it took me 2-3 days to get a hang of what I've done. Because you really cannot believe that, you've done so much distance in one day. Like it's the toughest one-day event in endurance is what it's called. So yeah.
And it sounds like maybe in that moment you cannot pick what you're really feeling.
Yeah.
But in those 2-3 days when you were there at the location, and what was your most memorable moment that you still carry with you even now that's pushing you to probably go forward in this journey?
So I think the crowd was unbelievable. So I did this in Hamburg, Germany, so I had to do 4 loops of 10 kilometers for my marathon, the last sport of the event. There were people who were there were DJs playing music. There were people doing barbecue. They don't know you. They're just shouting your name and they're like, keep going. So I still remember my last loop. I was so thankful. Like I was literally thanking everybody I was crossing, because you're like done. Like, you're there for like 10, 11 hours, you need that energy. So I think that people are giving you lollies, they're giving you Coke. It was just a festival. So that's something that I've not experienced. I think that was great. Second, for me personally, I think, the challenges of doing the swim, to be able to ride for 180 kilometers riding by yourself, and the wind there was crazy. So I've never done any ride in Jaipur. If it was very windy, I would just be like, I'll just do an indoor ride. I don't want to risk going out. And I had no idea Hamburg is going to be such a crazy place where the wind was such that I'm riding, but I'm unable to go forward. So
you feel like you were stuck in one place.
You literally. So if I'm putting effort, where I'm like, just keep going, because it was like crosswinds. Your like bike is going this way, and I had never experienced it. So for me, it was something new. And after like 150, you're like, what are you doing? Like you're just riding, and you have to then even run 42. So it was like step by step doing things.
In your last week of training for Ironman, that 1 week of intense, you're doing all 3 every day. I'm sure you must have hit some kind of a roadblock. What was it, and how did you come over it?
So for me, of course, the challenge was like, I would do a 150 kilometer ride today, and tomorrow in the morning I have to wake up at 6 and take my sessions. Like I was working full time as well. And I'm sure all the athletes, they go through it. But there were times when I still remember I did a 150 kilometer bike ride and I had a 15 kilometer run. It's called a brick session, where you practice both the events together. And it's around 1 o'clock, and I reach home and I'm like literally laying down, and my mom is like, "What are you doing?" Like that is when she was like, "You're literally pushing too much." And that's when I thought maybe I'm just, overdoing it, like because it was like peak heat, when I came back. So that was once, and but then, I just ate my food and I was like, this is it. That's why I signed up, for this event. I wanted to face these challenges, and that's why I enjoy the whole idea of doing such events.
What is currently motivating you to take on such tough races?
For me, I think the first thing is to see people doing such amazing things around me. Like, and even I think the power of social media, where I come across women running like 200 kilometers, 300 kilometers, and I'm like, wow, like this is unbelievable what a human can do. So that's my motivation, just to like see how far can I go, how fast can I go. So I think that is something. So start of the year, I'll pick a goal, and I just working towards the goal just gives you the consistency, discipline that I love. So yeah.
In your journey up until now, how many women have you seen take up a challenge like this and get on with it and see it happening to the end?
So I do have friends who've done Ironman now, and I do have like close friends who are actually signing up for such races. And gratefully, I train a lot of women, and I've seen somebody reach out to me, they're like, I can't run 5K, and they've done a full marathon.
Wow.
So just to see the whole process where somebody comes to you, they think that they cannot do it, but just to start and be consistent, and they reach that goal. So I've seen a lot of women taking it up. There are so many women participating in the half Ironman full, and they're literally just smashing it. Like the timings they are getting, it's so inspiring that you are motivated to continue.
And is that primarily in India, or are these people outside?
So outside, I think it was very common, like doing endurance sports, marathons was common. In India now, women are picking it up. And these are not just full-time athletes. People are like, they've got kids, they're running businesses, and they're taking out time for this. It's just so inspiring.
And I feel training for events like these is not simple, like 30-40 minutes at the gym and you're done with it. I think it's hours and hours of putting 20 hours a week is also less, I think.
Yeah, and so what people look at is like, if I'm going for a run, they think, okay, it's a 1 hour run. But no, it's before that. So you have to plan the entire day like accordingly. So I know what I'm doing this week from Tuesday till Sunday. I know what I'm running, how much I'm running, what speed I'm running at. So it's all a lot of planning. And you don't want to miss sessions because everything is so important. So yeah, so 16, 18 hours of training, eating well, and getting up every day. So if there are like 30 days in a month, there are going to be 5 days that you don't want to do it. So that's the whole idea, where you don't want to do it but you still show up.
Yeah. What's making you show up?
Yeah, I mean, there are days like I personally, because my work requires me to wake up like at 5:30. So there are days where I'm like, can I sleep until like 8? That'll be a blessing. So, but yeah, like it's just that I feel that, I have this chance, the opportunity to do something that I love. So there are days that I'm like, I don't want to run like a 24 kilometers for practice. Like I'm just tired. But then you just show up, you're like, this is such a good opportunity, and the end result is going to be good if you put in the work. So that's it. Just keep showing up.
Can you throw some light on high altitude running? Have you done it? And do you train people for that as well?
Yeah. So I do train people. So there's a very popular event, Leh Ladakh Marathon, that happens in India, and it's gaining a lot of momentum. So I have trained people for that. There are distances like you can do a 10K, 42, 72, and then there's 122. People are doing that. Yeah, it's unbelievable. That's what, so people are doing such amazing things, so you just get motivated to do it. So from science perspective, they say that when you do high altitude training, it helps you when you come back to planes, but the timing is very important. So say if I go today and if I have an event next year in June, the benefits are not going to be there. So it needs to be timed properly when I'm doing training at the higher altitude and coming back to the planes to get the performance.
Okay.
Yeah. It's very different. Like for Leh Ladakh Marathon, you need to be there 7 days, 8 days prior, because your body takes a while. Because I remember making a mistake. I reached today, and then tomorrow I was like, I'll just go for a 5K. I'll see what happens. I could not keep up with the speed which I do back in Jaipur or Delhi, wherever, and there was a little bit of bleeding from my nose. So it's not to be taken lightly. You need to go there, stay there for a while, and then
practice basically the whole. Basically, your body has to get accustomed to the climatic changes that are happening there. What about when you set hard goals for yourself, annual goals or biannual goals? What is the role of visualization playing in your mind at that time? And how important is that for you?
It's huge. I think that's something that also keeps me going because I think I learned about this from athletes because I read a lot of books, and I think all the top athletes, they visualize. It gives you direction that okay, you are there for the event. And I remember visualizing crossing the Ironman finish line so many times, especially when you have art sessions. Like you're riding for 150, 160 kilometers for practice. So if you think about, oh, I will be crossing that line, so it really helps. And I do believe in the power, and I think a lot of people are talking about it now.
Right. And when you're doing such intense training, I think as an athlete, probably what crossed your mind to have a studio? Because I feel running that must be so difficult for you to manage your own training and the business side of it.
Yeah.
What motivated you there?
So when I started this business, there was no idea that I'm going to get into endurance training or be an athlete myself, right? So the whole idea was to come back, do a fitness business, be a full-time trainer. For me, the challenge is to actually accept that I'll have to make some adjustments in both the areas. So I know that I cannot have more than, say, X number of clients at this moment because I don't have the time to do it. So for me, it was very important to sit down and decide, okay, I will have to say, keep those mornings off for my training, keep those evenings off for my training, maybe lose a few clients because I want to pursue my passion as an athlete. So to, accept that, because of course, when you're doing a business, you just want to grow, right? But you know that there's a big hurdle, but, so everything comes with a cost. So for me and there are times when, I've done sports so many times teaching people that, mentally you've done it so many times that when I'm doing my own session, I'm like, I don't want to do it because
Since it's already done with
yeah. So those things are there. But then, I think I just feel so, grateful that I can follow both the things that I love.
Right.
And in the end, when I see people messaging me that, hey, Shivangi, I couldn't do a push-up and I'm doing it today. And I'm like, wow, those things keep me going.
And talking about, when we're thinking of gaining motivation from other spaces, I know for sure that you're very, very highly self-motivated and you have great mentors who are leading your path here. Are there any books or movies that really played a very important role?
So there's a book called Born to Run. That's something that really changed the way I think about running. And it talks about humans running like 200, 220. I did not even know that this existed. So that's something I recommend if somebody wants to start running.
What kind of clients are you primarily training? Are they people who are already athletes and aiming to be just marathon runners or Ironman, aspiring to be at that level, or there are people who just want to stay fit?
So I've got both. So I've got general population who just want to stay fit, who want to, have a better lifestyle. They want to start lifting weights. I've got beginners who've never even done, say, one squat versus now they're like squatting like 30, 40 kgs. So I have people who are looking for general fitness, and then I have aspiring runners, like people who've never done like a 5K. They want to start. Then somebody who wants to do their 21K full marathon. So I've got those people, and then I've got people who are training for triathlon. So I'm training like 3 different groups of people
at the same time. Yeah. Who are you most fascinated by? Like who do you get inspired by? Who's like popular, or he or she have achieved some mark in the world of endurance training?
There's this athlete Courtney. She is amazing. So she's the fastest ultra runner right now. If you get time, look up. Like she does crazy 220 to 30 kilometers by herself. She's so fast, like we can't even imagine. And there's Lucy Charles. She's a Ironman world champion.
Oh, wow.
So these 2 women, their training, everything is so inspiring just to, even have access to what they do, like from social media or, their Strava and those apps. It's like amazing.
So coming to technology now and different kind of gears that you need, how important is that to look up different kinds of technology equipped items, devices, gears that can play a role in enhancing your training?
Yeah.
And what do you recommend to be the most commonly used items or device which you feel that if you're starting this journey, you need to have a few of these things with you?
So for running, specifically, I started with that Nike running app, which you get on the phone. Yeah. So you can just use that. Like that's the most basic. It's accurate. You just use that for your kilometers, speed and everything. But if you want to get into it seriously, say you want to look at targets, like I want to do a certain event in certain time, then like a smartwatch really helps. A decent one, like I use Garmin because it gives you data of, so if I'm running at say 5 minutes per kilometer, it tells me what distance, what speed, I can make my workouts and put it in. So it really helps you. And then you look at data like your heart rate, which can be monitored. It's not 100% accurate, but it gives you an idea. You can monitor your sleep. So I'm wearing this like 24 hours. So those things really help you when you're looking at enhancing your performance.
Okay. Is that only for running, or is that applicable for swimming, cycling?
Yes.
Everything.
So everything. So if you want to get into performance side, then definitely you need to invest in some gadgets. Like this is one basic that you need.
Okay.
Yeah.
When it comes to taking up so many challenging acts, when you have a business to run, you have so much of training to do, and coming from, it's not been too long that you've been doing this for, it's just been a few years. What has changed in you as a person with the change in this lifestyle?
So I've been an athlete all throughout, and I think I miss that part about me. But what I love is that, the consistency that comes with this, the discipline that is required. So I know that everything I'm doing is very time bound, that if I have to take a session at 7 o'clock, I have to be there at 6:45 for my clients, right? So time is such an important thing in life, that if I have a training session, if I miss it, I know there is no way I can get it in. Like, for example, if I have a run, I can only do it in the evening or the morning because of Jaipur, the weather here. So if you miss something like a session, that, will play a big factor later. So that's one thing. And second is patience, because I talk to so many people, from different backgrounds. They have different challenges. It just teaches you to be a little more calm, which I think I was not earlier. I was in basketball a little aggressive, and how you are in school. But endurance has given me, so you're running like 4 hours, 5 hours by yourself. And Ironman is a sport where you can't even listen to music.
Right.
So being by yourself for that long, just makes you more calm.
And you can listen to music while doing a marathon.
Yes. So for a marathon, you're allowed, but Ironman as a sport, you cannot listen to music. So I had to change that about my training as well.
And that's almost 13 to 14 hours of doing such different high intensity sport, but you just have you and your mind.
Yeah. So I think and then you're also racing against time. So, that's also a factor. So you're like, will I make the cutoff? I hope everything goes well. So those things.
Has there been a challenge you faced being a woman in this entire journey?
Definitely, like small things, like as I said that, if I had to go for a run at 4 in the morning, like you will think twice before stepping out, right? Safety is a big factor, but there's a good community of people who are there. So if I'm going for an early morning run, I'd rather go with somebody. Bike rides, venturing out, highways by yourself, you cannot. Like if you're riding 200 kilometers, you will not do it in the city. You can't because of traffic and, other things. So you're generally outside the city. So you would not do that alone. So, those are small things that...
How did you overcome all of this? Did you always find people? Did you always have a community around?
Yes. I mean, it's a supportive community, but there are times when, you have to do things by yourself. So I still remember there was a very early morning run for my Ironman. So I was outside Central Park, and I'm also very scared of dogs. So I found one patch, which was I think 500 meters. That was the only lit patch. So this is, I think, 4:30 a.m. or 4 o'clock in the morning. And I had to do that run. I think I had another session after. So I was just running. I think I must have done like 10, 12 kilometers just in that patch. And I was just hoping I could see somebody, because you're scared, the car is going by your side and you're like, so it's safe, it's getting better, but still you will have those thoughts as a female.
And it's a bit of a risk that you are taking at that time as well. What has been in this entire journey, any failure that you thought would not happen to you, but it happened, and how did you come out of it?
I think there are small things that, I had like a small injury so I mean, I now look at it as a small, but when that happened to me, I got my scans, and then somebody told me, like one of the doctors, that you have to get a surgery. I was like shattered. I was like, if I get a surgery, there is no coming back. So, those things happen to you. But gratefully, my family was very supportive. They were like, no, you go to different cities, see different doctors, and, just figure out. So I was next day in Delhi meeting different doctors, and they said that this can be taken care of. So you don't expect such things to happen, but then to accept it, work around it, and I had to do a 50-kilometer run. So with that injury, just believing it will get better, I did that run and I came third in my category. So wow, just taking this as one of that things are possible.
You did have to kind of have a strong will.
Yes.
And you did not go through the surgery?
No, I did not.
Maybe physio and other...
Yeah, so physio, a lot of rehab work, which is very boring. You have to do the same thing over and over again. But gratefully, all this is improving in India, where I met the right people who were like, you don't need a surgery, you just need to do this. You can overcome this with a little bit of training. So
Do you plan to take on more Ironman events in the future for yourself?
yes, so that's the idea. I'll do a few marathons. That's the near goal, and then get back because I think I really enjoyed the whole idea of training for 3 different sports.
And your next location that you have in mind, probably?
I've heard New Zealand is amazing. I've never been there as well, and I've heard the event is also like one of the best. So that'll be one thing, or anywhere in Europe. Yeah.
And do you see yourself mentoring future athletes who are aspiring to be Ironman or who already completed that?
Yes, so I have recently trained somebody for the 70.3 in Goa, and that's something I enjoyed. So I truly believe that you need to enjoy what you're doing. And I just wanted to see something, I have fun doing it. So definitely that's going to be another thing that I'm launching next year.
Okay.
I'm already training a lot of marathoners, aspiring runners who want to start their journey. So this is another angle. Yeah.
And in what way do you want to evolve, internally as a business owner, as an athlete, on the very personal front? Do you have any goals in that direction as well?
Yes, I think the whole idea of reaching success very fast is something that I want to change. Like, sometimes I sit and I'm like, okay, I'm not doing enough. I want to reach my goal very fast. So it's about being patient. It's also about not being too hard on yourself. Like, there are days when I've done like a 32 kilometers and then I'm working and I'm like, I'm not working enough. Like, that's not right. Like, my body also has some limits. So I want to change that where, I'm more acceptable of the fact that energy is going out in different directions. I'm doing many things. So to accept that, to, have a better plan and to stick to it. And yeah, just to enjoy the whole process of growth as I go.
Fantastic. When people with you are training for marathons, when they're finishing smaller runs like 5K, 10K, doing a half marathon, they should take a good enough break before going for the full marathon? Or are people jumping onto that too quickly? What's your take on that?
Yes. So, there needs to be a process. Like, if you've done a 5K, I recommend that you switch to a 10K rather than jumping to a half marathon. You can do. So, humans are capable of doing anything, right? So, you can definitely do it. But in terms of health or, the risk of injury is quite high.
Okay.
So, it's good to have a structure that you do a 5K, you graduate to a 10, then you do a few 21 kilometers, improve your timing, and then you move on to a 42. Okay. So that is what I suggest, and that's what I did. Rather than
in how much time? What was the time lag in the
So that will also differ on your basic fitness level. There are some people who are generally fit, like they've been training, they've been doing some kind of fitness all throughout their life. They might be able to do it faster. Somebody from a sporting background might be able to do, say, like, do this whole process in like 8 months to 1 year. But there might be. So I think it's very important as a coach for me also that, I learned that everyone has their own time of reaching their goal. So when I'm like, I have somebody who comes up to me, so I'll talk to them and understand what do they really want. Like, maybe my goal is to become a faster runner, but maybe for them it's just a lifestyle thing that they want to do.
Just to try out. Probably.
Just to try out, just something they enjoy. So for me as a coach, do I really want to push them to be faster or do I want to make them love the sport? So I have somebody recently, she went for an event and I told her, just don't wear a watch.
Okay.
Just don't think about your timing. Just have fun. Like, you're not there always to do it in a certain time. Maybe that's my goal, but doesn't mean that's your goal as well.
Correct.
So that's something that is very important to understand, that everybody comes from a different.
So when a person is beginning their journey as a runner and they don't even know exactly what is a half marathon, what is a full, but they just want to be able to take it up as a sport. What are the first 2-3 things to focus on? Because you get confused. You look at distance, look at time. What do you need to do there?
Yeah. So first thing is just to actually set a goal. Like, say for example, you're starting out, instead of just thinking of the 42.2, the full marathon, say I want to do a 5K, right? Just forget about the time. Just think about first reaching the distance. That's one thing. Second, a great method is walk-run method. For beginners, I use that for my clients and it's recommended because running the distance for that long can be a little challenging. So there are some ways, like for example, you're doing a 1 kilometer run. So you do 400 meters of running and you do 100 meters of brisk walk. It gets your heart rate under control, you recover, and then you can just continue doing this method. So there are different ways. Walk run is a great idea to start off with. Third, don't compare yourself. Like, I know there are people who might be faster than you, who might have reached doing 42. Doesn't matter, it's your journey. You might take 6 months, you might even do it in 3 months. So just focus on your journey and reach out. There are also a lot of blogs on the internet. You can read from good sources. You can hire a coach. You can also, download apps which will help you. So have a structure and try to stick to it.
And when you get into training for an Ironman, you're training at different altitudes, climates. The city that you live in could be a completely different climatic scenario than the city you might actually compete in. Yes. So do you already start managing your gears and your devices according to your performance city?
Yes.
What role is your athletic gear playing in that scenario? Can you throw some light on that?
Definitely. So you need to actually, like, even if I'm training for, say, a run in Jaipur, and this is in the summer, and I have a run in winter, so it'll make a big difference how your body is going to react. So, like, I was training in Jaipur for my event that was in Germany, and that was cold there.
Right.
So, smallest things like the swim. So, if the water temperature is low, you wear a wetsuit. That's like a full suit. You have to wear it. It's rule as well. So you have to practice that. So even if in the summer here in Jaipur, I was wearing it and swimming in the pool, even if you feel warm, but you have to get used to that gear. And there is a rule which most of the runners, most of the athletes follow, that never wear anything new on the race day.
Right.
So if I have an event, I will wear everything from the socks, shoes, everything what I will be wearing on the race day. Same nutrition which I will be. So you have to practice so that you don't need any surprises on the last day. So yeah, same. So the gear which I was to wear there, like my shirt, everything was practiced before.
So kind of you maybe taking advice from your mentor as to what all you need with yourself on the performance day. You start utilizing all of that for your training.
That's right.
Beforehand.
Even the nutrition, what you'll eat before. So like so you have to carb load a day before, even if you're running a marathon, half marathon, Ironman. So what I would eat from morning, afternoon, evening, everything I've already practiced.
Right.
So say like earlier I used to have pasta for my carb load dinner, which I switched to dal rice now.
Okay.
If I'm used to having dal rice and suddenly I'm having pasta, I don't know how it's going to respond. So you have to practice everything. You take carb gels when you are running. So like there are these
What
gels.
is the carb gel?
These are like gels which come in like small packs, which you consume every 45 minutes for 45 minutes to 60 minutes, and it just gives you that energy. What you're looking for.
Okay. What is the content in this?
So it's very different for different brands, but it's basically higher carbohydrates.
Okay.
Got some electrolytes as well. So we consume that. So like which brand also makes a big difference. So I was taking another brand for my practice. I forgot to carry it, so I bought new for one of my events and I threw up because my body was not used to taking that composition, whatever it was. Right? So you have to practice everything. Before my long run practice runs, I know what I'm eating. So I'm eating oats, whatever quantity, that same thing I'll be eating before the race. So no surprises. Yeah.
Okay, can you define heart rate zone for us?
Yeah, so this is a new way of training which a lot of people are taking up, and there's a lot of buzz around it. So generally there are like 5 heart rate zones: zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, zone 5. Now you can find these by doing some tests, or generally we look at our watches and we take the data from there. If you want it more accurate, then people wear heart rate monitors. So that's more like getting into the technical side of it. So generally speaking, for improving your endurance, like that's your stamina, people generally prefer staying in zone 2, zone 3. And when you're in zone 4, zone 5, that's your tempo, lactate threshold. So you need to train all the zones. But for a sustainable fitness, you should be staying more in zone 2, zone 3 is what they're talking about. But the challenge is the heart rate will vary a lot because we are not full-time athletes. So like today, for example, I've had a very long day and I didn't have a good sleep, so my heart rate might be way higher than what it should be on the second day of training, right? So it's very difficult to gauge it. So that's why a lot of people, they look it as one of the factors but not really rely on it 100%. Your food will play a major role if you had to travel, so those things can change how your heart rate is responding.
Technically speaking, when somebody has a flat foot, how are they training properly for these kinds of events?
Yeah, so first is to get it, get a checkup that do you really have it. Like that's one thing. Second, there are a lot of shoes and gears which you can, like people have got those like soles which you can change. But I think first you need to know, and then there are ways to also strengthen your feet. Like barefoot walking is something people suggest that can be done. And then if you go to a good physio, like a chiro, they can really suggest you how you can improve on that.
Okay. Another thing that comes up in sports or in general fitness is bloating, water retention, consuming electrolytes. Can you throw some light on that, and also on sweat rate that comes up in sporting events?
Yeah. So when we talk about bloating, that's a lot to do with your food, and it is very different. Like just talking about women, like women may feel more bloating before the period. After that's very common, and sometimes that's something we need to understand that standing on the weighing scale every day can that's why not be the best way to actually see your fitness, because you may weigh 1 kg more tomorrow because for bloating or water retention. So we need to understand those things. In terms of water consumption, it's safe to consume water during an activity. Of course, if you overdo it, your body will yourself tell you that you feel like throwing up and stuff. So it should be like sips that you're consuming. But if you're training outdoors and in general, electrolytes play a major role. So when I'm say doing a longer run, I'm not just consuming water. I generally take electrolytes. So I prefer staying natural. So I'll have like lemon with jeera, rock salt, like a basic homemade electrolyte, and then just sip on that. Because when you're sweating, you're not just sweating water, but also salts from your body. So you need to balance that out.
The intake has to be managed accordingly. When people are doing a lot of high altitude training or very intense kind of workouts, or even for divers, when they go into, abnormal levels of depths, they start hallucinating. Have you come across any incidents like that?
So I've heard that one is from one of the events that happens in Jaisalmer. It's called the Hell Race.
Okay.
So Hell Race. So that's where I did my 50 kilometer. They only have 3 events: 50 kilometers, 100 kilometer running, and 160 kilometer.
Okay.
So I had a friend who did this event, and this friend told me that because the 160 kilometers is overnight, so you start at 12 in the afternoon and you finish next day. So you're doing it throughout the night.
You don't take a break at all when you do 100 kilometer?
Like you've got like 8 stations, that's like 60, so you can have food and then you keep going, but mostly you're by yourself. So this person saw dogs, but they were actually not dogs but bushes. So those kind of things people experience when they're doing longer duration events. There's a international athlete who talked about talking to a devil while running in a trail, because this person was running more than 180 kilometers. So people have talked about such incidents which they see in endurance running.
And what does it take for you to come out of it? Do those memories linger on for too long? Does it play a very bad role on your mental health?
Not really. I think people, once they're done with the event, once they recover, they kind of just look at it. I've not come across if somebody has had a negative impact of this, but yeah, I mean, you do talk about it later because it's something that
it's just fascinating. Did you ever come across anything like that? Did you experience something like that?
No, I've just I do have those blocks of where I don't remember things when I'm doing such events. Like you're in a different zone. People call it runner's high. I don't know what how to describe it. But like crossing the Ironman finish line, don't remember it.
So you don't have a sane memory of it?
I don't. So when I saw the video, I saw what I was doing. So I was like clapping and I don't remember it. When I saw the video which my sister took, that's when I know how I reacted to the end line. They also shout because it was my first time. So they ask you to ring the bell. The first timers, I don't remember listening to that as well. And I did not even do it because I was so in a different zone.
Okay.
So, those are some incidents that happened with me.
So when people are doing endurance training or any kind of intense training and they have any medical conditions which they probably overcome with a better lifestyle, with more focusing on fitness, but when they actually attempt such intense sporting activities, there are incidents that happen. Especially, I think after COVID, it has increased with a lot of people getting cardiac arrests and some unforeseen situations. Why is it really happening? Can these be prevented?
So I think even if you don't have a previous medical history of any disease or any issue, you should be careful. I think doing too much too soon, putting your body under a lot of stress, is something that everybody needs to be mindful of. You need to also be mindful of things like sleep, your food, other stresses in your life, right? Now, one thing is regular health checkups is very, very important. I get it like twice a year because I'm putting myself under so much stress, physically. Mm-hmm. That's one. Second is you need to know how you're feeling. Like there are times when there's a very thin line between pushing too much versus taking that step back, which when we're in the event we actually forget, because you're in that zone. I want to push because there's so much about pushing the boundaries, pushing that sometimes you forget that maybe your body is asking you to take a step back. So that's something. Second, always listen to a health practitioner, get your regular checkups and also train slowly. say like you need to have a structured training, which is something very, very important. So there is a rule that we generally follow, like a 10 to 15% increase of load weekly. What that is, I'll explain. So say for example, I'm running 30 kilometers this week. Second week, I'm not going to jump into 100. I'm going to increase it to like 35, 40. Slowly and gradually build up my stamina, my endurance to reach my goal rather than just jumping too fast, because in the end, it's your body, right? Things like proper cool down, proper nutrition, hydration is also very important. So preventing, there are of course a lot of incidents happening. We don't know post-COVID what has gone wrong.
Correct.
But it's about just, being very, very mindful of what you're doing.
In some situations, you feel that can be avoided.
Yes.
If taking precautions and if trained properly, mindfully, some incidents could have been avoided as
Yes, that's possible. Like there's a lot of things about fat burners. People are consuming that, going to the gyms. It's actually not safe to, be on those and then do your workouts. People are having like pre-workout coffee. Like, of course, it helps. Like, there are some people who prefer it, but overdoing it, your heart rate is shooting,
That's not a good
and then you're just pushing. Like, you need to know when to stop. And then of course, like if they follow a structured program where they're aware of what they're doing and not just randomly picking something from Instagram because somebody else is doing it and just doing it, those things can save you.
Two things that just come to my mind right now are two kinds of new techniques or these new trends. One is this warm electric suit training. Is that safe to do?
It is, if it's done in the right way, that's safe. But one thing, this is very interesting because people think that when they sweat more, they burn more.
Correct.
I have seen people in peak summer wearing like full this thing like track suits and running and sweating away. That's not going to help you. That can actually cause dehydration and also lead to a lot of issues later.
Correct.
So you need to understand the weather you're training in. Like if you're wearing in heat because you think you'll sweat more and you'll lose more fat or weight, that's not right. So people need to understand
if there are
that.
those electric waves or some sort of vibration going across your body, do you think that is safe?
That's safe because there has been research done, but how much you're doing it, how you're doing it, under what guidance will make a big.
So definitely guidance is very, very important. There is a new medicine in the West, which I'm forgetting the name right now as we speak, but it's meant for diabetic patients.
Ozempic, if I'm not wrong.
Ozempic. Yes. What's your take on that? Because I'm seeing so many celebrity influencers on Instagram really promoting it, and to lose weight quickly or to look younger, they look like they're in the 30s.
So, I mean, from science perspective, maybe, but I don't think that it's a long-lasting, impact which is going to last, because there's also a study where, so similar to training, like I'll get an example, like if I've been running 10K every day, my body's so used to it that after a point of time, if I don't do progressive overload, that means I don't increase the load, I will not see changes. Same is happening with this drug where people are taking it, suddenly they see changes, but after a point of time, they're so used to the dose that there's no change. So what then? Like what happens then is the question. So maybe because it's a new drug, it's something that people are consuming right now. People may see fast changes, but they will reach a plateau. And after that, we don't know what's going to happen.
So could this also mean they don't know how to come back from it?
Yeah, and maybe they stop seeing changes. Like, so you might have seen like there are times when people, let's talk about, lose weight very fast, like in a month they're like literally down 30 kgs and suddenly they're back. So there is a high possibility this can happen.
So the fluctuation could be too quick. The impact may not stay long,
and also maybe bad for your health. Okay, because whenever anything is happening like that, it's not good for your health. It should be a very slow, gradual process.
And do you also advocate keto diets, intermittent fasting? As a trainer, as a mentor, would you tell your clients?
I don't personally support it. I myself have been on a lot of restrictive diets like low carb, low fat, and all those back in school. I feel it does put a lot of mental restriction. And because I've done psychology, I know people have gone through disorders like bulimia, all those things. So it's not necessary to the time it's medically required. So generally these diets were there with people who are in the higher BMI or obesity level. So they were in US earlier started because of that. You can do it. The question is it sustainable? Can you see yourself being on a keto diet all throughout your life? Sure, you can do it. But if you come back, then, you may see that you're gaining the weight back. So for my clients, I promote sustainable. Eat whatever you feel like, portion control is something, manage that. Like I don't remember, for 3-4 years I didn't eat a pizza because I was like, no. But now I am at a stage where I know once in a while it's not going to harm, right? You need to enjoy.
You know your body's rhythm and system by now. And I think most of these things that come on the internet are such trending things. And it's called trending for a reason, because it trend only for some time.
Yeah.
They're not long-term.
Yeah, so if you want to
solutions.
experiment, you can. Go ahead, do it. Intermittent fasting, I feel, anyway, if you follow the basic Indian cycle, like you eat dinner by 7,
Yeah.
you're, eating your next meal by like 6, 7. Like, you're already fasting when you're
For 12, 14 hours.
So why do you want to really, increase? That's my take. I'm sure there are people who've done more research on this and they might support it. But personally, I don't really, suggest. And especially for athletes, like, it's not recommended.
It should be more sustainable.
Sustainable and, like something that you can do long term.
Okay. So, Shivangi, I think what we spoke about today was very inspiring for me individually, because every year I discover something new about my body and something new in the realm of fitness. And I feel like, okay, there you can, as a person who has a life going on, can still have a life in the world of athletics and fitness, which for me, I used to think that it's only for people who are like starting at the age of 5, 6, 7. They have that push from a very young age, and ये आप life में आगे जाके शायद नहीं achieve कर पाते हो. But I think you've bust a lot of my personal myths today. And I think not just me, but this conversation, I feel to inspire many, many other girls who don't even have the idea that fitness can be an important part of daily life and it's not supposed to be looked at as a competition or a medal to win.
Yeah, and I think what you said is so right, where, people think, and it's the society where, somebody reaches 50 and they're like, you're old now, don't do this, don't do that. It needs to change. We need to tell our parents that it's time for you to get active. Like, if you're a certain age, don't. Of course, you need to follow certain protocols. You'll be surprised when I crossed the finish line, there was a 75-year-old female who was before me. Like, she crossed Ironman before me.
Just before you at that moment.
So, can you believe, like, age is nothing. Of course, you can't ask somebody to like just go all out, but it's about starting whenever you have the time. And especially for women, to take out time is so important.
And I think to have the mental grit that, first of all, the self-belief that you can do it.
Yes.
And you have to put in those many number of months or years to kind of stay laser focused on that goal as well.
Yeah.
So on a closing note, is there one piece of advice or a mantra that you follow for girls out there specifically to be able to have the courage to take on this journey?
Yeah, so I think fitness needs to be like, I call it a daily routine, like how you eat food, that needs to be part of everybody's life. Life has changed a lot, where early people were very active, and now because of work and everything, they're all very like sitting for the longest hours and, doing other things. So your life demands fitness right now. My mantra will be discipline, stay patient, stay consistent, and just enjoy the journey. You don't have to do something that somebody else is doing. Like, if you enjoy running, please, do it. But for women specifically, you need to lift weights. Strength training is very, very important. Don't be afraid to lift weights. You will not get bulky. Even if you do, that requires a different training, different nutrition. Like, there are some women out there who are looking to do that. It's their goal. That's achievable with a lot of other factors. But if somebody's looking for general fitness, toning up, you need to lift weights, and don't just think about lifting 1-2 kgs, lift heavy. Okay. Because that helps your bone density. Osteoporosis, something that happens. It will help you with your menopause, many other factors. So that's one advice.
Fantastic. If you had to describe your journey in 3 words, what would that be?
Continuous learning process, I think. That's one thing.
Yeah. And?
Wow. I don't know. What is it?
If I had to add to your journey from what I've learned, I think discipline. And punctuality. You really spoke about time.
Yeah, I think that's something, punctuality and respecting others. Like, everybody comes from different. So I think having that respect for others. Yeah.
What would be your one piece of advice for aspiring athletes who are already in this game, who probably completed their marathons and now they're looking out to be Ironman?
Yeah. So one is that, reach out for help. Even if you're not looking for coaches, there are people who are there to just help you from their experiences. So I've had such amazing people. I would reach out on Insta and they were very kind enough to get back. So don't be afraid to reach out. Do your research. Have the faith that you can do it. And then just get on it. Yeah.
Fantastic. For 2025, you said your goal is the Delhi Marathon in February end. Anything else in your plan for the next 1 or 2 years?
Yeah, so personally, definitely, just improving as a marathoner, that's one thing. And then once that's done, get back to a little bit of endurance, so my Ironman distance again. Professionally, I am looking at improving as a running coach. I'm doing my certifications. I did my level 1 recently. So that's something I believe that every year I want to continue learning because there's so much to do in fitness. So that's going to be, so hopefully I can inspire more people to take up running or improve in their journey.
Do you have a number in your mind that I want to complete these many Ironman events?
I don't want to. Hopefully, I mean, my aim is to hopefully do it till the time I can.
Okay.
That's one thing, and I want it to be a part of my life all throughout. So yeah, there's no number. Let's see.
Do you ever imagine yourself swimming more, maybe more open waters, more seas that you want to cross?
Yes, that's something because it's something that so I like to do things that that don't let me sleep. Like this is something like skydive was one thing where I was like when I signed up for it, I was like could not sleep, and that joy that that brings. So definitely open water is a big challenge still. Like sometimes like I am like on a beach and I'm like, how did I even swim?
Wow.
When I look at water, I still have that fear. So to overcome, yeah, like looking at more swimming events. Yeah.
Fantastic. We're going to end this conversation with one super quick rapid fire.
Yeah.
So you cannot think before you give me an answer.
Okay.
Are you ready for it?
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, first question. Your most favorite race location?
Delhi.
Your best recovery meal after the workout?
It'll be dal rice.
Okay. Morning or evening training?
Evening.
Okay. Your most preferred running shoes?
Saucony Canberra.
Okay. Your favorite motivational quote that you probably go by?
Yeah. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step.
Fantastic. You already said that you dislike swimming or it's your weakest spot. If you had to choose between running and cycling, what's your most favorite?
Running.
Running, okay. One piece of device or gear you can't live without?
Garmin, my watch.
Your watch. The biggest cheerleader in your life?
My family.
They have been the biggest supporters of everything that
I do.
Fantastic. And your one dream triathlon location?
New Zealand.
New Zealand. Fantastic. I think this was a great conversation. I had a lot of fun, and thank you so much for being here and taking our time for inspiring not just me, but I think every single listener that we have on the show today. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I had a good time, and yeah, definitely, hopefully, we can inspire more people.
Definitely.
Thank you.
I hope you guys learned as much as I did. I think it's opened up my horizon. I'm almost inspired to run a marathon. I feel like whatever I am doing in my fitness journey is not enough. I feel, why can't I take a leap of faith and do something more with my life as well? When someone as amazing as her has made it sound so simple and easy at the same time. I hope this was inspiring for you as well. I feel no matter what age group we are in, it's never too late to start anything in life. And I relate this kind of a thinking in all areas of life. Whether you want to start a business, you want to sing, you want to paint, you want to do anything in life, it's just about taking the first step. Please like, share, comment, subscribe the channel so that we are inspired to keep bringing amazing guests for you guys. Thank you so much.